You may be seated. All our lives, we are hounded by the fear that there's not enough. Not enough stuff, not enough money, not enough time, not enough love. And that fear begins soon after birth, when the first hunger pangs strike, because up until then we've been continuously fed through our umbilical cord, and for the first time since our conception, we feel, what is that? Hunger! And we don't like it. And realize that we do not have enough. So we communicate our displeasure in the only vocabulary we have. And that fear continues into childhood, when anything I see is mine, and anything I touch is mine, and anything I want is mine, and our parents try to teach us to share, but we know better. Because if there were really enough stuff in the world, we wouldn't have to share. As children, we discover there's never enough stuff, and as teenagers, we find out there's never enough money. And that disappointing revelation comes as our parents quote to us from mom and dad school that they went to and say, what do you think, I'm made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees. And then the cruelest cut of all, no, you can't have that. There's never enough stuff, never enough money, and never enough time. No matter how early we get up or how late we stay up, we can never seem to finish everything we need to do. And then there are all those distractions and interruptions that get in the way of all the things we want to do, like school or work or responsibilities. And saddest of all, somewhere on our journey to adulthood, we discover not only is there not enough stuff or money or time, there's never enough love. And it happens when we find someone that we love who doesn't love us, or who doesn't love us as much as we love them, or who doesn't love us the way we want to be loved. And then on the other side of that are those folks who love us more than we love them, or who want to be closer than we want to be, or who cling to us and make us feel trapped, or who are simply unlovable or annoying. And try as we might, we just can't work up any kind of love to share with them. The sad result of growing up human is this. All our life we are hounded by the fear that there's not enough. Not enough stuff, not enough money, not enough time, not enough love. And there's not. There is never enough. Because no matter how much we get, we always want more. And even if we get what we think we want, it's not enough. Because as soon as we get what we think we wanted, we see something else and want that too. A faster car, a bigger house, the latest gadget, a newer toy, another adventure, a sexier relationship. And while we're dreaming, how about another hour in the day or day in the week to enjoy it? Of course, that ain't gonna happen. So we dig and scrape and acquire and gather and hoard and save and collect and protect and shoveling more and more into our lives, trying to fill the Grand Canyon-sized chasm inside of us, but it doesn't work. And we end up feeling just as empty as when we started, because there simply is not enough stuff, not enough money, not enough time, not enough love to fill us, not if we are trying to fill that cavity by gathering and getting. Unfortunately, it can take a lifetime before we recognize that and realize that God's economy is different from ours. In our human system, there's only so much stuff, and certainly not enough to go around. Simple math tells us, with a finite amount of stuff, the more you have, the less I get. And the more I give away, the less I'm going to have. So the only way for me to make sure that I get all that I need is to subtract as much as I can from you and from anybody else and for the rest of the world and add it to myself while trying to prevent anyone else or anything else from subtracting anything from me. But in God's economy, He swaps the pluses and the minuses. In God's economy, we receive by giving. With God, the more we subtract from ourselves and add to others, the more we have to subtract and add. The more we give, the more we have to give. And while the more we grasp and grab, the more slips through our fingers and evaporates or dissipates. God's truth is we will never have enough for ourselves until we learn to give to others. We will never have enough stuff, enough money, enough time, enough love, unless we share and give away a portion of the stuff and the money and the time and the love that we have. God blesses us to be a blessing to others. And He created us to be pipelines and not reservoirs, hoses and not buckets. We have nothing except what God gives us. And God gives to us, expecting us to pass it on to others. Like hoses, as long as we let God's blessing flow through us, there's a never-ending supply, and there will always be enough. You know, if you get in a water fight with somebody and you only have a bucket, once it's over, it's over. But you screw this into the wall, you can go on forever. That's the way that it is. There is a never-ending supply, and there will always be enough as long as we let God's blessings flow through us like a hose. But the minute we tighten up in fear that there's not enough, and we try to hold on to what we have instead of letting it pass through us to others, we kink up and clog up and stop up and plug up, and God's provision ends. When we quit giving, God quits giving. The only way to have enough for ourselves is unkink, unclog, open up, and let it flow from God the source through us, the hose, and spray it all on to other people. Giving away a portion of what God gives us is the only way for us to have enough. Enough stuff, enough money, enough time, enough love. And that's what the Bible lessons are about today. In the Old Testament, in Lamentations, we hear, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. God is infinite. There is no end to His love and mercy. No matter how much we use today, there's always just as much tomorrow morning when we start out. We don't have to worry about there not being enough stuff, enough money, enough time, enough love, because God and His love and what He shares with us is infinite. Let's do the math. If you have an infinite amount of anything and you give away some of it, how much do you still have left? An infinite amount. And that's how God is. That's how His provision is. And that's how we can be. We can share with those in need without fear of not having enough, because as long as we're a hose connected to God, God's infinite blessings flow through us continually. In God's economy, God gives to us so that we can give to others, so He can give more to us, so we can give more to others, so He can give more to us, you get the idea. God gives to us first, and the more we give away to others, the more He gives back to us. In 2 Corinthians today, Paul writes, just as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in your love for us and one another, see that you also excel in the grace of giving. Just as God calls us to grow deeper in faith, more joyful in hope, and more lavish in love, He also wants us to grow more generous in giving, because as we do, we benefit. The more we bless others, the more God blesses us and sets us free from our fear of not having enough. That's exactly what happens in the gospel double story today of Jairus' daughter and the woman with the hemorrhage. And you're thinking, what does that have to do with having enough? Well, put yourself in Jairus' place. His daughter is dying. He knows he doesn't have enough to be able to save her. But he hears that miracle man Jesus is in town, so he runs to him. He elbows his way through the crowd. He falls down in front of him and says, Jesus, my daughter is dying. Please come and touch her and heal her so that she will live. And Jesus agrees to go. And can't you see Jairus anxiously dancing, waving people out of the way, telling Jesus to come on, because he knows that time is tight. But Jesus just walks along at a normal pace, greeting folks, smiling at children, in no hurry, while Jairus frets and sweats. And suddenly Jesus stops and asks, "Who touched me?" And the disciples snort, "Look at the crowd. Everybody's touching you." But Jesus keeps looking around until he catches the eye of one particular woman who is mortified that she's been called out. And Jesus beckons her, and she falls down in front of him and tells him what happens. She's been bleeding for 12 years, and it stopped when she touched him. And Jesus says, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And the crowd goes wild, and what a great story, and that's great, it's wonderful. Unless you're Jairus, whose daughter is dying, and who's terrified that there might not be enough time, enough love, enough of God's power to save his daughter. And then through the crowd, Jairus sees friends coming from the direction of his house, and from their faces, he knows what he has feared most came to pass. There's no need to trouble the teacher anymore, they say. Your daughter's dead. And Jairus' world collapses. His daughter, his princess, his treasure, the apple of his eye is no more. And he thinks there was just enough time. There was just enough power. There was just enough of Jesus for one healing, and that woman took it. She's been waiting 12 years. She could have waited 12 more minutes, but no. And now it's too late, and there wasn't enough, and my little girl is dead. And Jesus ignores the news, and he looks into Jairus' eyes, and he says, "Do not fear. There is enough. Just believe." And this time, Jesus walks quickly. He's taken Peter and James and John. He follows Jairus to his house, where there's already a crowd of neighbors weeping and wailing in the yard. And Jesus asks, "Why the commotion? She's not dead. She's just asleep." And they laugh at him. Can you blame them? And unfazed, Jesus walks into the house. He takes his entourage upstairs to the girl's room, and bending down, takes her by the hand and says, "Darling, it's time to wake up." And she does. And she jumps into her parents' arms, and Jesus says, "Give her something to eat." What 12-year-old is not hungry? All his life, Jairus has been hounded by the fear that there's not enough. And for a few terrifying moments, it looked like there wasn't enough, and his daughter was dead. But when Jesus entered the picture, suddenly there was enough, more than enough. There was plenty. There was abundance. There was enough for him and for the woman on the street and the crowds that pressed around, and his daughter and the disciples and the town and the whole world. And that's how it is today. When Jesus enters the picture, there's not just enough, there is always abundance. We never have to fear again that there's not enough stuff, enough money, enough time, enough love, because Jesus showers us with plenty if we invite him into our lives, and if we share what we have and pass on to others a portion of what God has so generously shared with us. If there is an area of your life in which you feel like you don't have enough stuff, enough money, enough time, enough love, it may not be because there's not enough. It may be because you're not being generous with what you have. And you've put a kink in the hose of God's provision. And the key to getting what you need is giving from what you have. Let's invite Jesus into our life. And where we fear we don't have enough, let's ask him to provide. And as he does, let's share it with others. Our stuff, our money, our time, our love. Just as we excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in our love for one another, let us see that we also excel in the grace of giving.